This is the Liz Harrison Show.
Good afternoon, folks. I'm Liz Harrison. Thank you for listening to Vigilant Liberty Radio, or if you're catching this on K98talk.com, thank you for listening there. This is the Liz Harrison Radio Show. Tuesday, January 20th. Yeah, I'm going into slow motion or something because it is State of the Union Day. Two options here. Either I really want the day to go very, very, very slowly, which isn't really working out for me, or I want it to be tomorrow and just skip the whole grand show tonight. For anyone who doesn't, live on news channels or ignore the television altogether, you may have caught the MSNBC commercial for tonight's speech. Why are they treating this like some sort of celebration? I mean, it does not look like anything that would be advertising something that theoretically should be boring as hell. Yeah. It definitely should be. Well, it's a good intro for a drinking game. I know quite a few people who will be doing that. I know quite a few people who say there isn't enough alcohol on the planet. Anyway. And I know quite a few people who will not watch. I unfortunately will not be one of them. I think I will be watching. Even though I won't rely very heavily on it for the content. Transcripts are a journalist's best friend or something. Yeah. I don't want to get the words wrong. This is why I like answers via email as opposed to doing verbal interviews. As for what to expect tonight, well, taxes, 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 and oh, by the way, more taxes. And don't believe it when the president says it's going to save the middle class. It never does. Now, I don't know what they teach in Economics 101 anymore. I really don't. I have to wonder. But this is something that I have tried repeatedly to teach to my mother, who lives on a fixed income that relies on investment funds that rely on the stock market at least a little. Regardless, the bottom line is that whenever the headlines are saying things are going great for the rich folks, the people who are in deep into high finance, blah, 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 lo and behold, my mother's funds are going up. She's not rich. She's a senior citizen. Please explain to me. I want to understand this because, yes, we've been doing better with this voter block, but not as well as we should be. I know AARP is really great at pushing liberal BS, but really? This is getting really ridiculous. Seriously. I mean, first it was the whole Obamacare, let's rob Medicare to pay for deadbeats. Let's screw over senior citizens to pay for people who don't want to work. Because remember, the whole Obamacare is mostly Medicaid. They won't let you say that very often. They'll keep on saying, oh, but we have these 5 people that we found after searching through millions that happen to have bought health insurance on the healthcare exchange, but we're subsidizing most of their payments, so therefore they're not really helping to defray the costs. But they really, really need it, and do you really want to take it away from them? Yes. Yes, I do. Because, we had a much better option, but the GOP, I shouldn't even say conservatives when I'm talking about legislators, because they're not. We have very few individuals in Congress, in state houses, in state senates, you name it. We have very few conservatives in office. We have a whole pile of Rick Santorums that may or may not be religious nut jobs. What is Rick Santorum other than being a religious nut job? Well, let's see. Rick Santorum is a big government Republican. He's no better than Obama, because he wants to grow government just as much as Obama does. The only difference between them is how. So what is the better solution that the GOP has failed miserably at promoting? Let's start with the interstate commerce, shall we? I mean, how many times have we said, if we made it possible for insurance companies to sell across state lines, you would radically increase the options on the market and therefore force prices down? Because you would no longer be limiting competition. But by making these companies have to establish full routes in each state they want to do business in, you are limiting their ability to sell. You are limiting the options for the people. This isn't hard, folks. Never mind the fact that we need to stop letting liberals and, big government GOP people sit there and continue with the misnomer that the Affordable Care Act has anything at all to do with health care. It was a giveaway to the insurance industry. That's all. It is corporate welfare. I don't know why we keep pussyfooting around this. The only one that is winning in this game, other than the liberals being able to put conservatives over the barrel for suggesting that this was a bad idea, those few conservatives that are out there. No, it isn't. It has nothing to do with healthcare. It does not address a single reason why we had skyrocketing costs. Doesn't. Because, all those people that we added on to Medicaid that had previously been uninsured and going to our emergency rooms and totally screwing up the system, so to speak, at least that was the claim, guess what? They didn't find primary care physicians. They kept on going to the damn emergency room. With or without insurance, their behavior in obtaining health care remained the same. So this was not healthcare reform. This was an insurance. And you can't even call it reform. You can't. This was a bill that made it easier for the insurance companies to screw the public. Because whether or not the Affordable Care Act is actually causing the insurance companies to have inflated costs, guess what? Yeah, they're increasing premiums any which way they possibly can. And of course, the folks at Harvard are all upset about it because they didn't foresee this when they were touting this, and now the bill has come home to them. Oh, but no, we're not going to hear about that tonight, by the way. They're going to say how many people were actually covered by the Affordable Care Act. They're going to lie through their teeth. They're not going to say anything about Medicaid. They're going to act like there are people who are actually paying into this monstrosity when the vast majority are not, and the vast majority are being subsidized by tax dollars that we don't have to spend. So we're going to talk about raising taxes on the top 1%, because they don't make jobs, they don't do anything useful for society, and the ones that are in high finance have absolutely nothing to do with maintaining or growing the financial investments of individuals on fixed incomes like senior citizens that are now living on whatever's left of the retirement funds that hadn't been pissed away in the various drops in the market that we've seen over the past several years. You know, remember the Great Recession? Yeah, so they're screwing them over. And for that matter, they're screwing over the next generation that is about to retire because their funds are depleted and they may or may not be able to retire when they want to. And that may or may not coincide with the wishes of their employers. Winning, isn't it? But let's keep hurting the top 1%. That's a great idea. Wonderful. Let's hit them up. Let's see. What is the top dollar that would make these people happy? Would it be 90%? Oh, I know. There are a lot of complaints. The top 1% are responsible for 99% of the income in the nation. In other words, they're getting 99%. Okay. This is America, sweetheart. You don't like where you're at? Work to get more. Want to whine about it? I'm sorry, I'm tired of hearing it. I really am. Do I make as much as I'd like? Hell no. Have things that I have wanted to do with my life worked out exactly the way that I want? Hell no. Does that mean that I roll over and say, okay, I'm going to go to the government and I'm going to see if I can get some money out of them? Never. Never once. That's just the way it is, folks. At one point in my life, when I had been ineligible for insurance by any other means, I had been on Medicaid for a short period of time. That's it. And that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't actually had medical needs at the time either. Yeah, it was one of those retroactive things where I signed up and got coverage so the damn hospital would get paid and wouldn't leave me with many thousands of dollars in debt. So, and obviously my income was low enough at the time that that was the case. But what did I say? Even though I had been eligible, I would have never even applied had I not actually needed it. Okay? I have theoretically been in the need for things and theoretically would have been eligible. Did not apply. It's how I was raised. Because, once upon a time, people raised their children to think that it was shameful. If you were able-bodied, if you had the ability, any which way you possibly could, to make your way in the world, the worst thing you could possibly do would be to apply for government assistance. It was a shameful thing to do. People felt that you had to just absolutely stop. But that's gone now. No, now we have Julia that shows, no, every person must rely on the government from the cradle to the grave. That's the new way to live. And you'll hear more about that tonight, no doubt. Because, we don't have enough programs. So we're going to talk about giving away community college. If you didn't read what I wrote about that on Town Hall, you're doing it wrong. I very rarely do blatant self-promotion, so let's put it this way. The husband, he never reads anything that I write ever. Read that, actually approved. And he calls me a liberal, so go figure. If that isn't an indicator of how much fun it is in this house. Wow. Anyway, I've got to stay away from the personal. So, yeah, we want to have free community college. We're not going to worry about how it's going to be paid for. They say it's going to be about $60 million over 10 years or something, or 60 billion. I don't know. Who cares how many zeros it is? Who cares what the front number is? Because guess what? Whatever they say it is, it's probably only a third of what the actual bill will be once it actually comes due, if it ever does. Which in this case, I hope it doesn't. I hope that the legislators that aren't really conservative decide that this is not a good idea. Lawmakers, please stop spending money. By the way, that's what Rasmussen is telling you the people are saying. One thing that people are saying going into the State of the Union is stop spending money. I didn't stutter, but it bears repeating. Stop spending money. Remember those commercials where they showed the Chinese classroom talking about the age of America and how wonderful we were until they owned us? Well, they already do own us. They're just not quite to the point where that commercial was. You want to get there? Keep it up. And oh, by the way, if you're not paying for the education, people don't consider it valuable anymore. Reality check. How many people have a high school diploma? How many people have it hanging on their wall? Not too many have it hanging on the wall. Why? Well, if they were going to hang it on the wall, I'd venture a guess that if they got a cute little diploma for graduating kindergarten, it's probably hanging on the wall right next to that. There's the value of it, folks. And I alluded to a problem that we have as far as high school is concerned. We have essentially abandoned the concept of trades training in our high school systems. Yes, we do have vocational and technical institutions, VOTEC, if you will. They exist all across the country, typically involve car mechanics, electricians, plumbers, hairdressers, nurses' aides. Some of them have made the leap into technology, dealing with graphic design and other computing skills. However, by and large, they are still like they were when I was in school. The students tend to look down on students that are in the vocational training because they must be heading into a dead-end life, because they won't be going to college. I got news for you, sweetheart. I know people with doctorates that are making less money than my local electrician. Because even the guy with the doctorate, when it comes time to put in a new circuit breaker in his house, he's not doing it himself. Even if he knows how, he's not doing it himself. You can thank the government for that, because for the most part, in just about every state, if not every state, I'm sorry, I didn't look it up to see whether or not they all adopted these particular rules whenever it comes to building codes, but the United States comes up with a list of building codes that are generic, that go straight across the board. They can be used in all 50 states. Then there's groups of them that are specific to given regions like flood zones, earthquake zones, etc., etc. And they have special rules for them. But in general, the United States suggests that the general homeowner should not be able to install a water heater, circuit breaker, any high-powered lines, including what would serve an electric stove or a dryer. They should not install gas lines. And heck, even in some cases, they'll sit there and say that you should not install an electrical outlet in a room near a sink. You know, those special little ones with a little button on it that you can reset with the internal breaker. They say you should not be able to do that. That you need to hire an electrician or a plumber or or a heating and AC technician. You should not do these things. And most states have agreed. So, so much for that doctorate. Right? Even if you know how to do it, the government says you shouldn't. And in the grand scheme of things, I don't have a particular problem with that. I also don't have a problem with the licensure thing. But then again, I live in a town where once upon a time we had an electrician who was known as the fire bandit or some similar nonsense. Why? Because if you had your home or business worked on by this particular individual, who thankfully is no longer in business, it was more likely that you would end up with an electrical fire within the next 3 years than it would be in any other house or business in the area. Basically, he was an idiot, and he wasn't wiring things properly, and his work was resulting in a pile of electrical fires. Isn't that lovely? So, in few cases I have issues, and I'll sit there and say, we really do need to have something, some form of redress beyond just suing the pain in the rear. You need to be able to remove the person from doing business at all, so the easiest way to do that is to require a license, which can be revoked. The only problem that I have is that they're still able to go out there and say, well, I'm still an electrician after they've lost their license. We need to have have easier ways of knowing whether or not they're licensed. There's a sticky issue. And in the age of technology, that should be on a website somewhere. Just saying, if it isn't already. I haven't checked in a while, so maybe they finally did do that, but who knows. Speaking of licensures, I'm going to do a quick hit on this only because it has been sitting in front of me on the Facebook as a trending topic, and I can't resist. Remember Doogie Howser? The young doctor. Huffington Post reports, wow, police in Florida and officials at St. Mary's Medical Center in West Palm Beach have agreed to charge a teenager they caught posing as a doctor. The South Florida Sun-Sentinel reports police were called Tuesday after a patient alerted staff at the medical center's OBGYN office that a juvenile dressed in a lab coat was inside an exam room. The patient said the lab coat had St. Mary's logo and anesthesiology stitched on the front. A security guard told police he'd seen the teen around the hospital for a month. Another said the teen entered secured areas of the hospital this week. The teen told police he's been a doctor for years. The teen's mother told police he's under the care of a doctor and is not taking his medicine. How's that for you, folks? Oh my. How does that happen? A whole month? Wandering around a hospital in white lab coats and getting into secured areas in the facility and ending up in an exam room. Wow. Now, that's just way too amusing. Really is hysterical. I'm sorry, I just... This is an indicator of one of the problems. Just a little hint here, folks. St. Mary's Medical Center is rapidly evaluating their security protocols. Definitely. You know, that fingerprint technology that you got for your little iPhone, that might come in handy instead of just using the mag strip cards. Since apparently, if you get your hands on a lab coat, more likely than not, you're probably finding one of those mag strip cards to get into wherever you're trying to go. And yeah, we do have a lot of young people out there that are really great at various things and might manage to get themselves through med school. But it usually makes headlines. Even if it's just local. Just saying. I haven't seen it in a while, but yeah, if you have someone become a doctor or at least have good reason to be a teenager wandering a hospital in any sort of lab coat. Yeah, that usually makes local headlines, folks, and at the very least should have been in the staff memo. Oh, won't you welcome our youngest member of our medical staff? Obviously, they didn't think about that. Seriously. And whichever security guard said that he'd seen the teen around for the hospital for a month, I hope he's updating his resume. And more importantly, I hope the hospital, and if he's a union worker, the union, are both reevaluating whether or not that person should still be on the staff. Because if you left that person wander around like that for a month, you're doing it wrong. Just saying. Teenage kid in lab coat equals dangerous. I think that would be in one of the first classes that hospital security guards get. But hey, maybe I'm missing something. Or maybe they just think it's common sense. Anyway, it's the bottom of the hour. Time for some news. And maybe when I get back, I'll end up talking a little bit about internet craziness. We'll see. Be right back.
This is Vigilant Liberty Radio News from Independent Journal Review for January 20th. On the eve of the State of the Union address, President Obama's approval ratings are the highest they've been since the 2011 raid that killed terror mastermind Osama bin Laden. In a poll of 843 adults, the president received a 50% approval rating and a 47% approval rating among registered voters. But the president's negatives remain high as well. 48% disapprove of the president's job performance. 1 year ago, Obama's disapproval sat at 53%. The 9-point bump in his approval rating may be attributed to his tours touting the economy. After seeing one of the worst Ebola outbreaks in history, the United States sent 3,000 soldiers to West Africa and planned to build 17 Ebola centers in response to the ongoing outbreak that the CDC predicted could affect 1.4 million people in Sierra Leone and Liberia by the end of 2014. Now in January, the number of Ebola cases has declined significantly, and researchers say Ebola could be eliminated by June. And it appears the U.S. response, in the form of a $750 million emergency plan, was too late. Many treatment centers sit empty, having treated no patients at all. In response to the decrease in Ebola cases, 2 facilities were scrapped and several closed temporarily. Staff will work in local hospitals affected by the outbreak, and the U.S. is denying there was any misallocation of resources. The Iranian government has shut down a newspaper after printing what it calls obscene speech by actor George Clooney. When Clooney accepted the Cecil B. DeMille Award at last week's Golden Globe ceremony, he gave support to the victims of the Charlie Hebdo shooting and for proponents of free speech around the world. The reform-minded newspaper had been in operation only 3 weeks before the court in charge of cultural affairs banned it for publishing a headline and picture it deemed insulting. The director of the newspaper, Ahmad Satari, told a local news agency. Documentary filmmaker Michael Moore took to Twitter to slam snipers and Chris Kyle in the wake of the record-shattering release of American Sniper, a film based on Kyle's autobiography. Moore wrote, quote, "My uncle killed by sniper in World War II. We were taught snipers were cowards. We'll shoot you in the back. Snipers aren't heroes and invaders are worse." His comments were roundly criticized on social media. Sergeant Nick Irving, who served as a sniper with the Army's 3rd Ranger Battalion, said of Moore, "Well, I don't think he deserves the breath that I'm about to give, but I'll just say Michael Moore, he wasn't there in Afghanistan, and the last time I checked, he's never shot anybody with a scoped rifle." Irving went on to say he did not care if Moore thanked him or not, adding, "A lot of good guys and a lot of my friends died, for his right of freedom of speech. So I'm not really worried about what he has to say." This has been Amy Curtis with your Vigilant Liberty Radio News from Independent Journal Review for January 20th.
Hi, this is Jason Dibbler, co-host of Q with a View, heard every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on FTR Radio. Right now, FTR needs your help in making the jump into the 21st century through some long-needed equipment upgrades. This is where you, the great and loyal listeners of Great Conservative Talk Radio, can really lend a hand. Visit GoFundMe.com/helpupgradeFTR right now. Your assistance, no matter how small, will help to ensure that FTR can continue to offer some of the best conservative radio on the interwebs. Your donation of $50 gets you up to 60 seconds of airtime on FTR Radio 4 times. For $100, your ad will run 10 times, or if you don't want to run an ad, you can have 30 minutes of FTR airtime to talk about anything you want. There are other thank yous for other levels of giving as well, but those are some pretty great offers. We hope you'll consider making a small donation to help keep quality conservative talk radio alive and thriving on the internet. Visit GoFundMe.com/helpupgradeFTR today. Thank you.
Hi, this is Steve Hamilton, station director at AltCon Radio, and that sultry voice you're listening to is Liz Harrison on The Liz Harrison Show.
We're back, and I promised that I would talk a little bit about the interwebs, social media, etc. Well, didn't specify social media, I guess. But I was just looking at my recent new followers on Twitter, at GoldwaterGal, and noticed Nathan Schacht, which I know I'm probably ripping apart his name, Schacht. And his Twitter handle is backwards, of course, last name first. So at SCHACHT Nathan. And he's a writer at Media Trackers, a conservative, father, husband, Catholic, go pack go, proudly blocked by One Wisconsin Now. And as I just pointed out to him, he's getting a shout out because anyone blocked by One Wisconsin Now is a friend of mine. So yeah, this is his personal account, so if you want to catch up with him, just like I've decided to, by all means, follow him. Anyone who is blocked by One Wisconsin Now is good people, just saying. Now, as for bad people, there's been a recent dust-up on the conservative interwebs. People may or may not know Holly Fisher. She went to meteoric fame over some sexy photos that conservatives happen to like, I suppose. She had been a guest on at least one show here on Vigilant Liberty. And she ended up on War Radio and ended up leaving them. I'm not going to get into all of that. I'm also not going to get into all of the lurid details of why she has been getting a lot of unwanted attention lately. Because, I'm sorry, I'm not going to add to the fire. At least not against her. No, my venom is aimed at a reprehensible, disgusting piece of garbage that has the audacity to call himself a journalist. As an editor, I have been known to say to writers, just say no to certain websites. InfoWars tops the list. There are quite a few others. Obviously, the Daily Current, because, it's all lies. It's a screwed up version of The Onion. But otherwise, stay away from gotnews.com. This is not a real website. Or at least not in the sense that if you're looking for a reliable source, it is not one. Okay? And you know that you're really doing it wrong. I know. People are going to say, oh, it's the New York Times. No, you know you're doing it wrong, regardless of which side of the political spectrum you may reside. If the New York Times does a hit piece on your entire career, because, they're such a paragon of truth. If even they recognize that you are a reprehensible piece of garbage that needs to be off the web, then you need to be off the web, or you need to be ignored, or whatever. And I know, I am gathering fire. I did say, at Goldwater Gal, bring it. Bring it. I've had it. I'm done. I don't care anymore. The person who I'm referring to is Chuck C. Johnson. He's 26 years old, a blogger in California. He does hit pieces on a regular basis. He runs fast and loose with the truth. He doesn't really give a damn if it is the truth. He's going to report it. Which is why I said he's a bad source. But otherwise, now we have reached the slimy tabloid level. Because when you reach the level where you are engaging in extortion to get stories, you're doing it wrong. And then you become somebody who people like me pay attention to. And I know that might not seem like a really big deal. I've been around this game way too long. Way too long. And arguably some would say that this cretin engages in the same job that I used to do. Yeah, Charles C. Johnson digs dirt. That's something that I used to do for various political campaigns over the years. That's why I don't have a resume in the political world. People who write yellow papers don't have resumes. We may later on admit to the fact that we've done it, especially after we've put several years between where we are now and what we were doing then. But that's pretty much all we'll say. It's a nasty job. There's money in it. But there are actually ethical ones out there. There are people who wouldn't turn in reports on people unless they were actually, I don't know, true. We didn't make it up as we went along. We didn't engage in extortion. We didn't lie to potential targets to get them to fess up to what we suspected in a public way. Namely, headlines. We didn't make it personal. And most importantly, we didn't turn the personal lives of people, whether or not they happen to be in the spotlight doesn't matter. We didn't turn the personal lives of people into fodder for the masses in the same way that the National Enquirer does. Because you see, there's a really good reason for digging dirt whenever it comes to potential candidates for office. If people are engaged in really horrible behavior in their personal lives and they are seeking to hide it from the public while they are running for office, that doesn't end well. Case in point, Bubba. In hindsight, I wonder how many Democrat handlers thought it really wasn't a good idea to put a man with a woman problem in the White House. And I'm talking if they're brutally honest with themselves. I'm not saying come out and do a tell-all. And I've got news for you. Somebody came damn close to doing that. One of their higher-ups did say it. Did tell him, if you don't stop, they were going to walk. They weren't going to support him. They weren't going to help to get him in office. Why? Because they knew it would be detrimental to the office, to him, to them, to reputations across the board. And look at how it turned out. It worked out so well. That's why the dirt matters. when it comes to politicians. They are held to a higher standard than everyone else. And yes, I understand. Lurid details, horrible stories, they sell. But don't sit there and try to advertise yourself as a conservative. Don't try to advertise yourself as a real journalist. Don't try to say you are doing real news. I wouldn't give a good goddamn about the Charles C. Johnson if he engaged in some truth in advertising. Wouldn't care. And that's not even to say that there isn't a place for him. I mean, why not have a conservative National Enquirer? Take a chance on that, okay, Mr. Johnson? But stop trying to say that you're anything remotely close to a real journalist. You're not. You're slime. You're garbage. Your content is trash. My advice to anyone who's listening to this, you see anyone sitting there saying that they have gotten information from Got News and they are acting like it is a legitimate source. I mean, it's all well and good if they're sitting there ripping the hell out of it and saying that it sucks, that it's not truthful, that it is not worth considering as anywhere close to responsible. Fine, that's fine. If they're going to indict it and call it for what it is, go ahead, that's fine. But if they're going to say that it's a legitimate source, do yourself a favor. Stop reading them. Don't take them seriously anymore. I don't even know where to begin. I really don't. I mean, who knows? Maybe I will tick off somebody bad enough that he and his lovely little minions on the Twitter will try to go after me. Go ahead. I can still write. And I've got news for you. I have editors on sites that get a heck of a lot of views. And you know what? I think they're just about as tired of garbage like this being associated with them. Because, you know, Got News is sort of kind of considered a conservative news site. They don't want to be associated with you. They would be quite happy to have somebody sitting there saying, yet again, repeatedly, you're not news, you're trash. You're not a journalist. You're a tabloid assassin. You don't do news. You exist to make people miserable. If you can't get the story, you make it up as you go along. And if you think that you can go and push people's buttons, you engage in extortion to make them give you a story. Charming career. I think they had movies about that once. Wasn't there one? Oh yeah, LA Confidential. Danny DeVito played the person. I'll leave it at that. Because, you know, you reap what you sow. Eventually somebody will tick off the wrong person. Anyway. Yeah, it's wonderful. Really is. Of course, I'm still wondering, you know, he claims that it's a crowdsourced website. Crowdfunded. Wow. Oh, and it takes all the people like him, autistics, researchers, nerds, ex-law enforcement, whistleblowers. I don't know. I don't know. My advice? Go to Got News, find out who all the names are. That's it. Any of those people come anywhere close to you or anyone you know, shut them down. Categorically, just go straight down the line on the social media, block them all. That sounds like a plan. And this is advice to listeners and to other people like myself. This is not to say that I'm not willing to go head-to-head with these idiots. This is to say that I don't want them digging in whatever I have to say out there and try to come up with ammunition. Because, you know what? Some people might bow to extortion. I prefer the nuclear option. I don't deal with ex-law enforcement. I deal with current law enforcement. I don't deal with disbarred lawyers. I deal with ones that are in firms that ended up placing multiple partners on the bench. Get the difference? Hope so. And that, by the way, is how the rest of you should deal with this sort of thing. Don't get scared. Don't get nervous. Pick up the phone. Dial the police. State that you have an individual threatening you. I know the police aren't really going to do anything until they're sure that you're going to have some sort of bodily harm. That's not the point. The point is to have something on file. You want it documented. And then go and pick up the phone and call an attorney. I really do have to ask certain individuals on the Twitter, if you're not willing to take the intellectual property and little lawsuits like this, or you're unable to in various states, you know what? We really do. The lawyers out there, the big heavy hitters, you know who you are on the Twitter. You need to get a list together. Who do we call in a given state for whatever problem? You gotta network, folks. We need a conservative media legal network. We really do. Because, you know, if nothing else, maybe the little red-headed pain in the rear could be put out of commission very simply by burying him in paper of the legal kind. Hey, this is America. You could sue anyone. I know I'm really opposed as a general rule to frivolous lawsuits, but I don't consider this one. No, I consider it a public service. Bury the man in so much legal garbage that he just will never get himself back out. That's the perfect solution to idiots like Charles C. Johnson that David Carr over at the New York Times aptly compared with web-borne viruses and cybercrime. That about covers it. He is a virus. A blight on the web. Anyway. And I may or may not get annoyed enough later on today to just go forth and say more about this. Writing somewhere legitimate, unlike gotnews.com. Who knows? I know at least one editor knew I was going to talk about this. Anyway, over at Campus Reform, because I've got a couple minutes left, and I like to laugh. Yeah, and I don't want to think about State of the Union anymore. Donald Hindley, pro-Palestinian activist at Brandeis University, says he can no longer tolerate being on campus there anymore because they are too conservative. Really? I cannot make this crap up. Of course, he's one of the ones who was fighting against Ayaan Hirsi Ali. Is there any surprise, Mr. Pro-Palestinian? When Je suis Charlie came out, he put out a photo of a bombed out area in Gaza and says, Je suis Gaza. Really? Really? Caleb Bonham, I feel so bad for you for having to write this. You had to have been laughing hysterically the whole time how you were even able to see the screen or hit the keys properly to type this out. Now, Daniel Mail, M-A-E-L, over the campus of Brandeis, says, yeah, that's not quite the case. And the quote is, his claim that Brandeis features an atmosphere of conservative thinking vanishes in the presence of thought. It is Hindley's intolerance and bigotry that raised a number of questions for members of the Brandeis University community who believe in basic human decency. Bravo! One down. Now the question is, now that you got rid of this whack job, could you take a second look at Ms. Ayaan Hirsi Ali? Just saying. Maybe now that he's gone, she might not be considered so repugnant. Oh, good God. Thank you. One less totally whack job liberal academician out of play. Wonderful day. I'm liking this. And I know it's only one, but hey, you gotta take the little wins where you can. Really. Every journey begins with one step. So there's your one step. Coming up at 2 o'clock, the Bright Mics. No, I have no idea who they have on air. If you missed them yesterday, you missed the one, the only, Evan Sayed. And I guess he'd be the one to say he's the one and only. Other than that, let's see. Tonight is State of the Union night, and you have Alan Bordius, and more importantly, you have Crystal Schoenfeld on the airwaves tonight for your State of the Union coverage. I don't know if they're starting early or not, so I'm not going to give you a time. You got to watch at Alan Bordius and at Vigilant Liberty on the Twitter to find out, and on Facebook, of course, and know exactly when they're coming on the air, because this promises to be interesting, just saying, because, well, Crystal, if nothing else. Anyway, other than that, I will be back here tomorrow, assuming that Charles C. Johnson doesn't hire someone to take me out or something. Have a good afternoon, folks. Bye-bye.